to Gridiron Unfiltered, where the ultimate fandom meets the gridiron. I'm FDN Insider Joel Norris, alongside my partner in crime, FDN Insider Dom Flasco. Today, we're talking about some interesting topics in the land of football, talking about the biggest storylines heading into the college football season for 2025. We're going to discuss the top trade targets here in the NFL and where you could see them landing. Also, our interesting fan question, out of the three quarterbacks, who do you see winning their first Super Bowl first? Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or Joe Burrow? We're going to discuss that at the end. A lot going on Gridiron Unfiltered. All platforms, X, Instagram, YouTube. Subscribe and follow at FanDay Nation. Don, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Good. How are you? Not a lot going on in the football world, but we got a lot to talk about, so pretty exciting.
Absolutely, man, especially during the offseason. I mean, it feels like when you're in season, it doesn't really feel like, okay, like when you're in season, there's a lot going on, but then you're like, okay, it's the off season, there's nothing going on. But at the same time, there actually is. It's just off the field, business stuff, hype, predictions, all this stuff going into the next season. So, and it's a good segue to talk about what we're talking about now, which is the biggest storylines heading into college football. Last week, we talked about the biggest storylines in NFL and heading into the NFL season. We're flip-flopping. This time, we're talking about the biggest storylines heading into the college football season for 2025. And I'll start with you, Dom. What do you see right now as some of the biggest storylines heading into the 2025 season for college football?
Yeah, so I'm going to take it kind of into two parts. The first part I'm going to take it is just strictly team-oriented. So there's three teams that I'm paying close attention to. That's Penn State, that's Clemson, that's Alabama. So each of those teams are kind of in different phases of their programs. Penn State obviously going all in to win a championship this year. If they don't win it this year, they won't win it in a very long time. Franklin probably won't be the coach anymore. So can they pull it off? If they don't pull it off, I think you'll see a lot of big changes in that program. You look at Clemson, they're kind of on the brink of like, okay, I don't think they need to win a national championship this year, but they definitely need to make it back to the playoffs. Dabo needs to give another year of faith to his fan base. He gave faith making it last year. He needs to do it again. If they don't make it this year, what's going to happen to him? And Alabama, do they get back to the top, right? So their defense is coming back. Their defense is going to be really good. Milroe is no longer there, so you have questions at quarterback. You have questions at running back. A couple of their linemen are gone. You still have Ryan Williams, but is DeBoer able to make this back, not to the Nick Saban level, but give you hope coming in to next season, and for sure making the playoffs this year? It will be interesting to see. I know he's a good coach. It's just a lot of pressure when you are coaching that kind of program.
I think Alabama's an interesting one, honestly, and it is a lot of, for the first time in like a long time, Alabama's underlooked. And that's really weird to think, right? Because I was so used to growing up watching, okay, Alabama on top every year, the most number one recruiting classes, the top of the top, the elite of the elite. Everybody was chasing them. Now it's like they're just like everybody else. It's a wide open field. They're just like everybody else now again. And it's something that when I was growing up watching college, I wasn't used to seeing that. Now it's like something different, right? So it is interesting to see what Alabama can do. I'm curious to see, like you said, not get back to that level, and piggybacking off of what you said, not getting back to the level of Nick Saban, but can Kalen DeBoer take him to a level how he did with Washington, in 2023, going to the national championship? And it was a runner-up, granted, but, going to that, that stage, right? Can they do that? I think that he could, with the amount of talent and the amount of just the branding of how Alabama is still, because it's still freshly off. Okay, Nick Saban's gone, but at the same time, it's not too bad to the point where they're still Alabama, right? They're still going to get names and the branding's still there. I think Penn State, like you said, is an interesting one as well. I think it really truly is a make it or break it year. If they don't win a national championship with all the talent they got coming back, especially with how close they were last year, I mean, what's it going to be like, next year and beyond? Like, I don't know if they can, hang in there. Maybe they'll hang in there, maybe, but I don't know if they're going to be at the level that they were this past season and could be at this year. I think an interesting one there for me is LSU. I think LSU's a very interesting one, only because of how they loaded up, not just recruiting in top 10, but in the transfer portal. They were currently, I know the spring windows still has to happen, and the cycle doesn't end until after April, but for this cycle, they're currently the number one class. They got loads of talent coming in. They got the roster. They got guys coming back like Harold Perkins, Whit Weeks. They got Mansour Delane from Vaught Tech. They have Patrick Payton on the edge from Florida State coming in. Garrett Nussmeier coming back. He's probably the most hyped quarterback right now. He's the odds-on favorite right now to win the trophy, the Heisman Trophy. But it all comes down to coaching. Can Brian Kelly, and this is a way to put it here, just bear with me, can he out-coach a lot of these guys? And that's what needs to happen in order for him to back up the talk that he did at the Oklahoma press conference. I don't know if you watched that or not, Dom, but what he said, if you heard him say, we're taking receipts, see you in the national championship, I don't know if you heard that. It's been all over social media. You built the roster. It's on you. You have to coach now. It's a make it or break it year. They lose 4 or 5 games with this roster. I don't know what to tell you there. I think SMU's a good story. I think what they did last year was, and you're probably going to think, oh, SMU. But at the same time, I think it's an interesting story because they're bringing back a lot of guys. And I also think that the way they played all year in the ACC their first season, I'm kind of curious on what they can do in the ACC again. And then last but not least, I'm going to say Ohio State. I think Ohio State, I want to see if I think they're going to be in it, of course, but is it going to be like the run that they had this past season, or is it going to be a little bit of a dip? Can they beat Michigan? That's a big storyline there. I think those are some of the storylines that get to me with Ohio State, but just in general with LSU, SMU, and everything. But
yeah, and just to talk about the second half of college football looking forward is there's a lot of intriguing quarterbacks this year, like a lot. The guys who I think of most are like, what if Drew Aller is able to put it together? He would be one of the most intriguing draft prospects in a while. Same with Garrett Nussmeier. And then you have guys like Arch Manning. Does he live up to his hype? I think his hype is warranted, but obviously you see that last name and you just add a little bit extra hype on it. So I want him to make a name for himself, and I need to see it on the field first. And then you have a guy like Nico. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name.
Amaliava.
From Tennessee.
Yeah, Amaliava. Yeah.
And it's a tongue twister, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see if he can take the next step, because I was at the Ohio State game when Ohio State played them in the first round of the playoffs, and you could see that the skill was there, but I feel like from a leadership and just experience, like he needed an extra step. So see where he can progress. And my favorite quarterback, other than like if Aller and Garrett Nussmeier can kind of put it together another year, but the most intriguing guy, in my opinion, is Sam Leavitt from Arizona State. I think he's a really underrated guy. I think I love what they have going on as a program. I think that will be a sleeper guy coming into next year and draft the following year. I think he's a super exciting player, and last year was the first year he really played. I think that was he had transferred from Washington to Arizona State, I believe, and then last year was the first chance he's had to play, and he looked amazing. He led them to the playoffs. Obviously, they almost pulled off the upset win against Texas, so he's been there more than majority of the guys that we talk about in college football. So it'll be really intriguing to see what he does, what even Arizona State does as another team that's intriguing to me, because I don't think they're going to be losing a lot of talent, and I know that they've brought in a lot of talent in the transfer portal.
I think Sam Leavitt's a good case of, okay, he's a little bit underlooked going into 2025, and it's like, why would he be underlooked? He just brought his team to the playoff, against Texas in that Peach Bowl game. So I think that's a good one. I wouldn't sleep on Arizona State either, man. Listen, Cam Scattaboo is like, okay, that's a big loss, right? But Kanye Udo from the Army transfer going in, I talked about him on this past Wednesday's episode of Gridiron, and he's a solid back, man, and he could probably make a name for himself as a Sun Devil come fall. I think that Arizona State's a good case in the Big 12. I'm curious to see, and this is you're probably going to think this is interesting, but Iowa State. I think Iowa State has a lot of talent coming back. I think Iowa State a little bit, just a tad bit. I said this Wednesday also was a year early in the Big 12 championship. That's a year early. I think they can make it back. I really do. I think that the way they are built, especially with Rocco Beck, that quarterback, I think that Iowa State can challenge a little bit, challenge Arizona State and what they're doing a little bit, this coming up season. It could be a rematch of the Big 12 championship. Who knows? But I think Iowa State's a sleeper team for sure. I think also, to add to the point on quarterbacks, I think that this year, when it comes to quarterbacks, besides last year, I think last year was okay. I think this year's better. There's a lot of big name quarterbacks coming in this year, especially with like the hype names. I mean, you got Drew Waller, Arch Manning, you got Kevin Jennings from SMU. Does he need to develop? Sure. I'm not saying he doesn't need to develop. He doesn't need to develop, but he's got a lot of hype around him. Sam Levitt. Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier are two names out there that are getting thrown around. A lot of people are hyping up Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik. Klubnik is an interesting case there. I think there's a lot of quarterbacks out there. And I'll even go one more, dude. Carson Beck, transferring from Georgia to Miami. I think that's another name that a lot of people are going to forget about because, okay, the reason why he's not entering the draft is because his stock fell a little bit because he didn't have the help. But now he's got more help this year in receivers. Maybe he could make a name for himself again and pop off and reemerge as a top draft prospect for 2026. But I think this is the year of going into 2025 and even to the draft in 2026. There's a lot of good prospects going into this year, man.
Yeah, and one quick question. What happens to Colorado now that they've lost their two biggest superstars and they're going to be top 10 draft picks? I mean, they were literally the whole pulse of Colorado's program. Like, how is Sanders as a coach now that his son and his superstar is gone? I'm just really intrigued about like how quickly that program may go downhill because, I mean, they lost their two superstars. They've never been without those two. It'll be really intriguing to see what happens. I mean, I could truly see, like, he won't get fired this year if they play bad, but, like, another year of bad play, I think he could be without a job, but he does bring a lot of money into Colorado, so that'll be interesting because obviously their performance has not been up to par with what you need to be as an elite program. I know he's still trying to build that, but you had two elite players and you still couldn't get it done. Now those two guys are gone, so how quickly does that program go downhill if it does at all?
I think an interesting one, and I know we got to move on, but an interesting case here for a couple of minutes is with Colorado, and you're right. I think Colorado, because they have two options at quarterback. They brought in Julian Lewis. They brought in him, 5-star quarterback. And then they brought in, through the transfer portal, Liberty transfer, graduate transfer, Caden Salter. I think Salter will probably get the nod first and start first because he's got the veteran experience, only to groom up Julian Lewis. So if he decides to stay, I think, and the truth hurts, but I think that either Salter or probably most likely Julian Lewis is probably going to end up being a better prospect than Shadur was. That could probably hurt Dion maybe a little bit, but I think the truth hurts sometimes. I really do believe that he has a shot, that those two quarterbacks have a shot to be better prospects than what Shadur Sanders was in this draft. Colorado's an interesting case. I don't see them, and this is just my honest thoughts, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this before we move on. I don't really think I think they're going to be probably in the middle of the road in the Big 12. I think right now, especially in the Big 12, how it looks right now, to me, I look at Arizona State, Iowa State, and BYU as the three front runners right now in the Big 12 going into 2025. I think Colorado's middle of the pack right now.
Yeah, can't help but to see how they're trying to build a program. I mean, I know they're building it during the crazy NIL transfer portal era, but it's almost like you gotta sacrifice a couple years to just recruit and develop the guys you recruit rather than coming in, scrapping who was there and bringing new guys in. I mean, that was like the whole thing. Like the first time he stepped on campus, he's like, I'm bringing in my Louis bag. Maybe, I mean, I guess that's like a decent way to like start off strong and make sure that your team isn't a disaster right away. But like long term, is that really how you want to develop your program? Personally, that's not how I would do it, but that's where they have found themselves, and that's kind of the process that they have taken. BYU is a team that's also exciting because they are returning a lot of players, so it'll be interesting to see. And that conference is like actually not as lame as you might think it is with the Big Ten. I mean, it is kind of intriguing now. Definitely were more exciting than we all thought last year, and I think they could do the same this year.
And it's a tough conference. A lot of people don't think it's a tough conference, but it's still a tough conference. It was really, really competitive until the very end to get to the Big 12 championship game in Arlington. But, guys, if you want...
One more quick thing. Dylan Raiola for Nebraska.
Yeah.
That's an interesting player as well. Like, if he doesn't take the next step, does he instantly transfer to a contender like Georgia or Ohio State? It's very interesting to see because he has a talent, but Nebraska, do they have the resources around him? Kind of help him put that together. Sorry, but go ahead.
No, you're good. He was originally committed to Georgia, and he decommitted and he flipped to Nebraska.
In Ohio State, both of them.
And Ohio, yeah, he was committed to Ohio State, then Georgia, and then he flipped. Yeah, I forgot, and then he committed to Nebraska. That's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. That's an interesting case. What's Nebraska going to look like going into 2025? I didn't think about that. We probably should have added more time on that one, but. Guys, if you want to just rep anything with college football, look, if you're an Ohio State fan, you can have a championship banner now that they are the defending national champions heading into 2025. If you are a Clemson fan, you can get a mini helmet to rep in the background. If you're an LSU guy, you can get a bobblehead or a cornhole set to get ready for LSU and their football games. All college football collection and more. Click the link below and get your college football fandom on. Just click the link below at FanDay Nation on all platforms, on X and Instagram as well. Let's move on to the NFL and let's talk about the top trade targets going into the 2025 year. I think it's a very interesting topic because there are some key players who, one, have requested trades and who are being rumored for trades. And I think we need to kind of get down to this and talk about this and the nitty-gritty of everything. I'll start with you. Who are some top trade targets that there's a request, it's there, and some rumors about trades, and where do you see them like fitting in?
So we've only had a couple major ones. Obviously, as offseason grows, there's going to be more and more to talk about. Obviously, the big three, Miles, Cooper Kupp, and Debo. Obviously, you can see my Brown spirit here. I have a lot to say about Myles Garrett, but I'll hit on the other two first. I think Cooper Kupp is kind of a tough trade person this offseason. He's getting older. He has injuries. He plays in a very wide receiver favorable system. I think a lot of teams are scared to maybe invest a lot of maybe draft capital or role player to kind of trade for Cooper Kupp. I think it'll be interesting to see. I also think the Rams aren't the type of franchise to kind of just dump Cooper off into their highest bidder. I don't think they would trade him to a team like the Patriots, who would probably want Cooper Kupp, but I think they're going to respect him, which may end up resulting in maybe Kupp getting released and then him being able to choose which team he wants to play for. So that's kind of where I'm looking as far as Cooper Kupp. Then you have Debo. I think the dream scenario for any NFL fan is him to team up with Jane Daniels at the Commanders. I think Kingsbury could be so fun to have Debo and gadget him like Shanahan did. Whether Debo wants that or not, I'm not sure. He was kind of like hot and cold with that in San Francisco. So I think he will be very interesting to watch if he managed to get to the Commanders, which I think that they're going to be all in for another weapon. And then you have Myles Garrett, which a lot of mixed emotions for Browns fans. I'm the type of Browns fan to be like, hey, you're in a rebuild. You need to get all the assets you can. You can't win with a star defensive end. So it'll be very intriguing to see how long this process goes, because I do think it's going to go a while. There's a lot of internal conflict. Obviously, we want to try to hold on to him, but I think that's also leverage to see how much you can get for him. I do think he ends up getting traded. Before the Super Bowl, I would have said the Eagles would probably be the favorite to trade for him. It would be willing to give the most, but I feel like you're kind of content a little bit more as a franchise once you win the Super Bowl. So I don't know if they're exactly, would be willing to pay a big price at this point. But you also look at like Kansas City out. Kansas City would want him, but if you're the Browns, are you going to trade him to an AFC team? Which makes me think NFC teams, which like a team like the Cardinals, maybe they have the resources to do it. They have the room to do it. Obviously, they're not a complete contender. Then you look at the Commanders, right? So like, I'm already talking about them getting Debo. Now that they could get Miles, maybe I don't know if they could get both, but they're definitely a team. What level are they put at now if they trade for Miles? So I think it's going to be an NFC team for sure. Typically, the Browns have not traded to rivals or even same teams within the conference. Typically, that's what they do. I think they're going to respect his trade request. I think it's just going to take a very long time for it to happen.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Some good points on there. And that was, listen, we probably can even move on to the next segment because honestly, you just handle it perfect. You just was like, okay, spit it out. Let's go. That was really good. I honestly think on it, and it's just piggybacking off of you. I think Myles Garrett, to me, I could see an NFC team picking him up. It's trending towards, this is what I've been kind of seeing and hearing, is the Commanders. From what I've been, gearing towards is Washington, but I don't know. Who knows? Like, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, I know for sure it's going to be Washington. I'm just hearing and looking into it. I think Philadelphia is a big no-no. I mean, a lot of people are going to be like, okay, really? Come on, man. Now we're just going to stack up that defensive line even more. I think, honestly, and this is what a lot of people have been, I'm interested in Matthew Stafford right now. And I've told you this off air, and we've talked. I've been interested in Matthew Stafford for quite a minute. I want to know, because I know, look, Father Time is catching up. Okay, it's bound to happen. Time is not on his side. His career is shortened right now. So I'm trying to figure out, is he going to stay with the Rams for a little bit, like short term deal, and then retire? Or is he going to go to a team and stay there for short term and retire? I don't know. I just think that he's short, very limited. I'm curious to see what his next move is because he's planning on playing in 2025. I want to know how teams are going to handle Matthew Stafford. Regardless, if it's the Rams, if it's the Steelers who try to trade for him, the Rams were talking about trading him, but they also may want to keep him. I don't know what's going on with that. But I will tell you, I'm interested in that scenario and that story of what's going to happen with Stafford. I'm going to piggyback off you again and talk about Debo. I think Debo is an interesting one for me as well. I have been hearing the Patriots as well. I don't know why I've been hearing the Patriots, but I've been hearing the Patriots. Will Mike Vrabel invest in it? I don't know. Shrug. I don't know, man. I think that it would be a help to Drake May, honestly. I mean, to have a receiver like that, to have a playmaker that can help him out, because it's just one of it's just the first piece of it. So the Patriots can build their roster again. But that's a whole other conversation that we can talk about. It's a topic that we definitely need to talk about. Can the Patriots rebuild their roster? But that would be the first piece of it. The Commanders is a dream scenario, like you said. Come on. That's cheat. It's literally, you're playing a video game at that point, really, with Madden. I mean, with Jay Daniels throwing to Debo. That's ridiculous at that point. But I think the Patriots would be a good thing for Debo. Even though it's not a good look and a good situation going in, but if you're rebuilding, it gives Drake May some help. I think it would be a likely move, maybe. But that's just my thoughts on the trades. If you have any more final thoughts on it.
Yeah, only one final thought. I love you bringing up Matthew Stafford because that really is an interesting one. I do think it is kind of that time of the year as far as NFL goes. So like any little thing you can grab on at this time of the offseason, it's like you do it just for media. I find it hard to believe, as good as they played last year at the end, that they would go away from Stafford. I do think that they are going to chase on one of those higher picks that they have in this year's draft and get a quarterback, maybe like someone like Jackson Dart, is someone who I think could be really good in their system. But like, I can't help but think like they almost beat the Super Bowl champs. They had to play in their conditions in the snow. They were so close to winning it all, and you're going to trade. Like, I feel like you just do everything you can this year to win it all before Stafford's done, and then make sure you have your insurance policy in the rookie quarterback that you want.
And I'll say my final thoughts before we move on to our final segment and fan question. I think that Matthew Stafford is, like I said, is an interesting case because of the short term, and I'm glad that you brought up Jackson Dart. He's been kind of like rising on a lot of draft boards, and he did really well in the Senior Bowl. So he's impressed a lot of people. He is probably the most hyped quarterback to come out of Ole Miss since Eli Manning, no doubt. And I think that would be an interesting case. He looks like he's a Sean McVay type quarterback. So I could see Sean McVay picking him up and, grooming him up for the future. And then after Matthew Stafford goes, it's Dart's time. So that's an interesting case. I would try, if I'm the Rams, this is just me, despite the injuries, I would try to keep Cooper Kupp. I would try to keep Stafford. You're going to end up paying Nakua more because Nakua is probably going to be the future of that receiving room. But I would try to just go for it all again, dude, because the way they played last year, they were a dangerous team. And if they would have beaten the Eagles, they probably could have gone to New Orleans. I'm not going to lie. So I think the Rams are a scary team. But, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments. X, Instagram, YouTube, just down below. Talk about your thoughts on who the top trade targets are, your thoughts on everything as well. And Dom, I don't know about you, but football makes me hungry. It really does. I love burgers. I love, eating sausage, bacon, any kind of meat when it comes to football. Guys, and if you want to enjoy that kind of delicious food, click the link down below. There's burgers and sausage meat link down below. Click it. Click on it. Get your game day on and get prepped for game days and just get prepped for reruns of football even, and eat burgers and sausage meats. Click the link down below. Fan Day Nation. Subscribe all platforms. X and YouTube. All platforms. Okay. Fan question. Final segment. We got a few minutes here. Who, and this is our fan question for the communities out there. And by the way, let me just shout out the Fan Day Nation communities really quick. The question that was received last weekend was who's the current top 5 quarterbacks active in the NFL? Question through the roof. Everybody was answering. Everybody was, digging these fan questions. So big shout out to our Fan Day Nation communities. Thank you for tuning in to the Gridiron Unfiltered, and as well as just engaging in the communities with these fan questions. These are awesome. We're going to keep it up, and we're going to keep engaging with you guys. So, fan question is this: out of the three quarterbacks now that are active, who is going to win a Super Bowl first and win their first Super Bowl first? Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. I'll start with you, Dom. The floor is yours.
I hate this question because it is so tough, because the quarterback who I think has the talent to do it and has the leadership and just the ability to pull it off, especially in the AFC, is Joe Burrow. But what scares me is everything else around him. Yeah. And that's what scares me, and that's why I'm not going to choose him. I'm going to choose Lamar. I feel like you could say everything is just as unlucky for Josh Allen and the Bills to get there and to do it, but I feel like it's just as unlucky for Lamar and the Ravens. I think Lamar it's hard to explain, but I truly do think those two players are so similar, and it's so hard to make those two scenarios different. I think it's just simply a coin toss. I think the two teams are very similar. They like to run the ball. They like to not turn it over and get turnovers. They both have great defenses. I just think Lamar can make the extra play that wins you it all. Yeah. Josh Allen does crazy plays, but Lamar just has the next crazy play. That is what you need when you're trying to win a Super Bowl? I know it's a terrible answer. Fans, don't hate me for that answer. It's a very hard question because I truly do believe that Joe Burrow, because he has been there, it's easy for me to say him, but I'm scared about the team around him. Josh Allen, very much like Lamar, has had bad luck, but I think Lamar would be the one to pull it off. Maybe none of them do. I don't know.
No, that could also be true also. I didn't think about that either. I think my answer would be Lamar Jackson also. I just think that right now, because the situation with Buffalo, it's okay, we come close, and then Patrick Mahomes happens, right? And they just can't get over that hump. I think the Ravens right now are more equipped than the Bills right now. I think the Bills have talent, but they need more depth on talent. The Ravens have more depth, I think. That's just my opinion. I think that they have a better equipped team than the Bengals right now. I really do. I think that with the running game, I think on the offensive line, I think that they have a more equipped team rather than the Bengals right now. The Bengals could do it. Joe Burrow, I'm a Joe Burrow guy. I believe in Joe Burrow. I just don't really rightfully know what's going on with the front office right now. I'm going to take Lamar Jackson to win it first out of them. But like you said, who knows? They could never win one. But, I mean...
Yeah, and one quick thing. Joe Burrow and the Bengals have been there, and they've been closer than both Lamar and Josh Allen. What do the Bengals have, or what did they have when they were in that Super Bowl that the Bills and the Ravens haven't had since they've had Josh Allen and Lamar? Or since Josh Allen and Lamar have been trying to win a Super Bowl, and that's a elite wide receiver, like that it factor wide receiver. Yeah, Bills had Stephon Diggs, but I guarantee whoever first gets that elite game-changing wide receiver, whether it's the draft, trade, free agency, I think they're going to do it. They just need that playmaker on offense.
And that's the one advantage that the Bengals have over both teams because they have Jamar Chase on their team. But guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. On Fan Day Nation, all comments down below. X, Instagram, YouTube, subscribe and follow on all platforms at Fan Day Nation. Guys, if you want to get into the groove with all of these teams, Bills, Ravens, Bengals, there's Josh Allen, Pop Funkos, figurines, same for Lamar Jackson. There's a Lamar Jackson jersey, Joe Burrow jersey, hoodies, you name it, for all quarterbacks. And if you want to rep your team and do it the grand old fandom way, guys, with, down below with Fan Day Nation, and click the links below. Guys, also click our Fan Day Nation Insider pages down below. Me and Dom down below. Get to know us more as your host of Gridiron Unfiltered, and get to know us more with Fan Day Nation. And until next week with Fan Day Nation, until next week's Gridiron Unfiltered, Dom Blasco, partner in crime, Joel Norris, signing off. We'll see you soon on Gridiron Unfiltered. It's where the ultimate fandom meets the gridiron.